Hello, everyone. Welcome, or good Woch. Is a special Shabbos before Sichos, between Yom Kippur and Sichos. So we're going to celebrate with the story of the Baal Shem Tov, a little bit of the Moshe Leib Sassover, and Sichos Haran in Shem. So this is, one of those left field kind of stories. I don't know if left field is the right way to put it. One time, Erev Yom Kippur, before say Kol Nidre, the Baal Shem Tov was standing there and he would not start davening. And it seemed obvious from him that he was perplexed more than anything else. And they waited a long time. People cried. They understood. I mean, there's something going on, but it's not like. So then the Baal Shem Tov looked out of the window and he saw that an old priest is passing by the Medrash. So the Baal Shem Tov went out to the priest and started speaking to him. And started talking, asking how he was, until he walked with the priest to the priest's house. And the Baal Shem Tov asked the priest why he's not marrying a woman. The world was created, be fruitful and multiply, So the priest said, even though obviously the Baal Shem Tov is right, but according to his religion, celibacy, whatever, he is not allowed to marry a woman. So the Baal Shem Tov argued with him for a long time. And he said that at least now, at his old age, let him be mekayem that mitzvah of be fruitful and multiply, and give up his position as a priest. So the priest said, just to get married to some kind of a woman is not as covered, and if he's going to look for a woman, that is befitting for his stature, the woman wouldn't agree to marry him. So the Baal Shem Tov said that a specific minister, feudal lord, whatever, I'm not sure what it was, has a beautiful daughter, that Bevadai, the minister, will agree to give him his daughter for a wife. And he continued to speak to the minister more and more and more. And the beauty of the daughter of the minister entered his heart. And until his lust, overcame him, and he became tumah. Immediately, when Baal Shem Tov felt it, he left him, went to the Medrash, and started davening Kol Nidre. Well, after davening, people came to Baal Shem Tov, asked him, why did he go to speak to the priest? And he told them that there was a big judgment in Am Yisrael because there was no possibilities for the tefillas to go up, because this old priest has never experienced an impure emission in his life. So the Baal Shem Tov actually had to spend time with him and induced it on him until it happened. So the Baal Shem Tov, how does he know that this priest, has never seen it? No. How does he know that the priest became Timadik? So he said that the very instant that this priest became impure, it was impossible to stand next to him. And at that moment, the judgment were blocked. B'ezrat Hashem. It's an astonishing story. We'll tell another story about the Baal Shem Tov. One of the trips of the Baal Shem Tov, he went and stayed by the Rav of the congregation. And the Rav said to his wife, you see, we have a very famous person with us, so you should see how to honor him. I know that we already bought flesh, but I will go and find a special cut from it for the covet of the Baal Shem Tov. And when he arrived, the Baal Shem Tov arrived, the wife of the Rav went to see where's the flesh that she bought. And she said there was nothing left. And her heart was like broken. She went to her neighbor to borrow flesh from her neighbor. Her neighbor couldn't find any meat either. So she went to another neighbor, and she didn't have any meat. It wasn't a wondrous thing. She came to her husband, and she says both she and her neighbors all lost their meat. So, give him an answer what to do. So while she was talking about it, she just saw the shochet of the town going around. So she told the shochet that she doesn't have flesh to make to cook for the Baal Shem Tov. So the shochet said he mamish now shechted a young calf. So the Baal Shem Tov heard the words of the shochet. He says, I like the head flesh of the behemoth. Is it possible that you bring the head of the behemoth here and be menakar, take out the deposit when in front of me? So the shochet agreed. He went quickly and he brought the head. So the Baal Shem Tov started speaking with the shochet. And he says that the Olam says that there is some kind of difference in the difference of different behemoths. And he asked him, can you count how many teeth this behemoth has? So the shochet opened the mouth of this animal, started counting the teeth. And immediately the head of the behemoth closed its mouth on its hand, and he couldn't take his hand out. And he was pressing his hand. He couldn't. He was screaming. Hashem told him, why are you screaming? This behemoth is dead. It doesn't have a life force. And immediately the Baal Shem Tov screamed at the shochet, Rasha, say the truth and confess that you have never ever checked a lung of a behemoth. Whatever it is that you wanted to declare kosher, you declared kosher. Whatever you wanted to declare treif, you declared treif. So the Sheikhet admitted it. And the Baal Shem Tov didn't say the tshuva. And when they came to shul, the Baal Shem Tov moved his hand over the face of the Rav. And suddenly the Rav saw avenging angels, demons, sitting on top of the shul. And the Rav was shocked, obviously. Baal Shem Tov told him that the Shliach Tzibur is defiling himself before he's being over Shliach Tzibur all the time. And they fired the Shliach Tzibur. Can you imagine what an astounding, people think that these kind of problems only exist today. They only started today, the internet with these kind of stories of Shem Racham started already millenniums ago. Millennia, probably. So, with this, B'ezrat Hashem, we will move to Ma'aseh Tzadikim. So, we're talking this story about the Moshe Leib Sassover. There was one Ma'aseh that Moshe Leib Sassover said, until where the Ma'aseh Tzedakah needs to be. So he says, why is, he says, all the midos in a person's character were created for the purpose of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he asked, why was the midah of apikorsis, of heresy, created? How can you serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with heresy? So he said, it was created for tzedakah. So when somebody comes to you to ask for you for tzedakah and chesed, don't be such a frum guy and tell him, trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and tell him this kind of milah bitochen. Imagine to yourself at that point as if there isn't anyone that can help and deliver that poor person except for you. And with this, you will be Mekayim Chesed with this poor person. So these are very, very deep words to Avodas Hashem. Rabbi Avraham Reb Nachman's Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Livracha used to say, somebody else's Gashmius is your spirituality. Your Gashmius is Gashmius. Somebody else's Gashmius for you is pure spirituality. They also, Rabbeinu says, the union of that we have to judge ourselves. A person should judge himself. It says, Yesh din lemata and din lemala. When there is judgment below, there's no judgment above. So they asked Rabbi Nachman, what's the pshat of Yesh din lemata? Judging oneself. So he says, judging oneself is somebody else's penny. That means judging yourself. Not to touch somebody else's money. Now the story from the Moshe Leib Sassover was a ma'aseh in a woman in a town that had trouble giving birth. They sent a special messenger to the Moshe Leib Sassover, Zt'l Livrocha, to ask Rachamim. Now that person did not know him. He never met him. So he came at night, 2 hours after Chatzos to Sassover. He didn't see where to go. There were no street lamps in those days, and all the houses were dark. Then he saw one house, that there was a candle burning. And he went to the house, and that was the house of the Moshe of Sassover, but he didn't know because, the Moshe of Sassover, was awake from Chatzos. So he knocked at the door, and Moshe of Sassover opened the door. So that person asked him, "Is there a place to sleep here?" So he said, "Yes." We brought him in, gave him a little mashka, to revive himself. And asked him, "What are you doing? What are you doing here?" So he said he comes from a village not far away. There's a woman who needs to give birth, and his need is to go to the tzaddik from Sassover and to ask for Yeshua. So the Moshe of Sassover himself said, "Listen, this is night. It's 2 o'clock, afternoon. You can't go now. Everything is dark. Early in the morning, I will take you to him, and I will speak for you. I'm very close to him. He holds very highly of me. So tell me what it is that you need there, and I will tell him everything." So immediately, the Moshe of Sassover prepared the table, put food on the table, bread, and begged him to eat. Then he showed him a bed. He can rest a lot. So he lay down and he fell asleep. In the morning, he woke up and he was very distressed. Here he is. He was sent as an urgent messenger for a woman that is having trouble giving birth, and he's sleeping. So he said, I was sent here to go to the tzaddik, the Rav tzaddik here, and I defaulted on my Sichos. I ate and I drank and I slept. So Moshe Leib Sassover said to him, "I spoke to him already, and he told me," he said about himself, says, "Moshe Leib Sassover told me that the woman already gave birth to a baby boy, Mazel Tov, and go ahead and tell her relatives everything is okay. She gave birth, Chan Shalom." And he went. He left the house of the Rav, didn't know anything. And it's only when he was outside, somebody told him that he actually was in the house of the Moshe Leib Sassover. Especially with Rabbeinu's Heilige Yotzeit coming up, there's this kind of, I don't really know how to call it, which words to use for this. Obviously, we don't understand the nature of what one would call an Elf Yid, a tzaddik, kal v'chomer. We know that a tzaddik is somebody who is exalted. A tzaddik is somebody who can do things that we cannot do. In fact, one of the biggest problems in the Emunah Tzaddikim is a shtickle of a goyish problem. The Goyim solved that conundrum of somebody who is an Ish Kodesh, a tzaddik, I mean, that they say, whatever it is, I'm not a human being. Some kind of a freak that whatever that was born with immaculate conception, all kinds of nonsense. And if you agree to accept, to suspend your disbelief and accept the fact, I mean, if you're thinking, logically about it, it's nonsense. There's no such thing as immaculate conception. It's shtuyot. But what it does, it makes it palatable for people to accept that somebody like that, like an astronaut, an alien, that he can do things that nobody else can do. Okay, that's easy to believe. It is actually has this kind of belief has basically seeped into the Hasidic world in a different manner. On one side, you have a whole hashkafa, which is, I'm saying it is because Reb Nosson writes it, is what we call the Litvish hashkafa. There really is no such thing as a tzaddik. As far as they are concerned, somebody who's very, very great, and the tzaddik is some kind of it's like a quantifiable, it's a relative term. One is more tzaddik than the other. And this one is even more tzaddik than this one. And this one is even more tzaddik than this one, so forth. So at a certain point, that when somebody goes up the tzadiko ladder, or whatever you want to call it, he can, perform miracles and whatever it is. But it's the whole thing is really a blurry kind of thing. But the etzem mitzias that there is an inyan of a tzaddik, this is something that they basically do not accept. They can't imagine that. Now, come the Hasidim, which are the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, they know that there is inyan of tzaddik. The Zohar is full with this inyan of tzaddik. All this form is with tzaddik. The Arizal is filled. Everything is filled with tzaddik. The Ramchal is filled with the tzaddik. The Gemara is filled with the tzaddik. So the question is, what do you do? So Lamaitza, what they do is they find a route that sort of circumvents the problem of how does a human being become a tzaddik. The Goyim say no human touch is involved. Bingo, works for them, fine. By a lot of the Hasidim, the notion is that all it takes is for the Hasidim to declare somebody as a Rebbe. And that makes him a tzaddik. Now, there's a double-edged problem with this kind of definition. On one hand, we understand the fallacy of somebody declared a tzaddik because he's a Rebbe. Because people made him into a Rebbe, henceforth, or he's a tzaddik. It's nonsense. But the other side of the other edge of the sword is when you know that it's a silly notion that Yidden make a tzaddik. It's a tzaddik who's making the Yidden, not verkehrt. But the double-edged sword is that we therefore automatically assume that anybody, any Rebbe, that is not Rabbeinu, is really a false Meforsam, is not really a tzaddik. That is patently untrue. Anybody, a tzaddik is a true state that is a result of the kind of hard work and the kind of neshama that person has. Any person that will, quote unquote, make a career, make it his life to be a tzaddik will be a tzaddik. What kind of a tzaddik is going to be? That already depends on what kind of neshama he has. But it totally depends on being a tzaddik. There's a Maaseh, I think, from Rav Shaila Kirastir, I'm not sure if it's him or someone else. There was a tzaddik that he used to feed the poor people in his village. He used to give him meat every Shabbos, and whatever it is, he gave him meat every Shabbos. And what was the parnas of the people there? He had a cow, and he would get meat for that year. He'd collect money. He would give him 1 day, 1 week. There was no meat. He couldn't get meat for them. Here's parnasa was the cow. The cow gave milk. What did he do? But the poor people have no meat. He took his own cow and he shechted the cow and he gave meat to the poor people. You can't fake that. A tzaddik does that. In other words, being a tzaddik is really being a tzaddik. And then once you're a tzaddik, yes, you are a something else. You're something else entirely. But it takes a real doing. It doesn't matter how big your shtreimel is. It doesn't matter how many people your chassidus have. I'll never forget that Blazer Shlomo Shik said, what's the big deal? He says, there's a galach, there's a priest that has 2 billion chassidim, so what's the big deal? It doesn't make him a tzaddik. A tzaddik is somebody who is really a tzaddik. Especially as we're getting close in Shem, to Rabbeinu's Yotzeit, we're zeicher to be miskarav to the Ath Olis al Kulana, the one that made it above everyone else until Mashiach will come. In order to be a tzaddik, you have to be a tzaddik. And a tzaddik is something else completely. And it is the human mind that tries to fit, the round hole with the square peg in the round hole with. So is a tzaddik a declaration, a title, something that you get when you become whatever, or because otherwise, how can you talk about people, having Aliyas Neshama, having Ruach HaKodesh, and whatever? That Shem more shall be revealed. Let's take a quick look in Sichos Haran for this week and see what Rabbeinu has to tell us. Sicha 142, very, very important. It is shaykh to what Rabbeinu said on the pasuk, Odia emunoscha befi, I shall announce your emunah with my mouth. Sheikar ha'emunah, that the main emunah depends in the mouth of a person. Lekutei Maran Tanina, Siman 44. He says, I found from the handwriting of Chaverim a little bit of a longer explanation, he says, and this is its Lashon. When a person falls into Sfekis in the Munas Aber, a person falls into black holes of Amunah, especially when you go from one Madrega in Avodas Hashem to the next Madrega, especially coming from Uman. If you had a good Uman, chances are you fell into a hole. And you're not sure where your Amunah is, what's going on. He should say b'peh mola, ani ma'amin be'emunah shleimo, shehu yochid rishon ve'achron. I believe with complete faith the Kadosh Baruch Hu is yochid, he is the first and he is the last. Now, it's more than just a verbal trick or a psychological trick. But there is a deep Kabbalistic meaning behind this, reason for this. We know that every midah, chesed, gvura, tiferes, when it is in the supernal level, this is the kedusha, but when it falls down to gashmias, then chesed, when chesed fall down, it becomes taivas. When gvuras fall down, becomes Yitzhahara, becomes cruelty, whatever. And it says that there is gvuras the kedusha with which you sweeten the gvuras of the klipa. They have to be ameliorated, have to be sweetened. And the dibur, the actual dibur, is gvuras the kedusha. As it says in Tehillim, ugvurascha yedaberu. The speech the people speak is the gvuras. So it's nimtza. Therefore, when a person says, I believe, as we said, Kanal, this is the mighty of Kedusha. And with this, a person is mamtik all the sfekas, all the doubts, which is the gvura, the klipa. As the Gemara says in Brochas, a person should always, in other words, take the gvuras, the Kedusha, and sweeten the gvuras, the klipa. And the Gemara says, anybody who wants not to be angry, make sure that his speech would be relaxed, will be soft. So you see that Dibur Benachas, relaxed speech is that it's not so much the rogas and the silence that sweetens the anger, but actually speaking, loudly and angrily is rogas, but speaking softly. In other words, not just not saying anything at all. Obviously, not saying anything at all is better than saying something hurtful. That's in Nesdvarim. He says, but if you want to sweeten the gvuras, the tuma, what you need to do, you need to speak, because the speech in itself is gvuras, the kedusha, and that sweetens Bezat Hashem, the gvuras, the sitra achra. So hold on for a sec. Okay, so in Hashem, tomorrow night we have Yom Tov of Sukkos. That in itself takes a whole shir to speak about this amazing conclusion of this miraculous month of Tishrei, starting with Rosh Hashanah and Uman and Yom Kippur. And so Mirz Hashem, Monday night, Motzei Yom Tov, we will have a shir, and we'll talk about Sukkos, we'll talk about Sipurey, we'll talk about Sukkos with Mirz Hashem. So we should have a good Voch, a good Yontov, and alles Guts, Bezat Hashem. We will talk some more.